Hello, my name is Mary Pino, and I'm here today to teach you about the theories of Lev Vygotsky. Lev Vygotsky was born November 17, 1896, in Osha, a city in western region of the Russian Empire. Lev Vygotsky was an early 20th century development psychologist who developed a social culture theory of child development designed to account for the influence of culture on a child's growth and development. He had many contributions to psychology. Vygotsky is considered a seminal thinker in psychology. What is a seminal thinker? A seminal thinker is a mind who opens new pathways for minds that follow. Much of his work is still being discovered and explored today. Part of this was because his work was often criticized by the Communist Party in Russia, and so his writings were largely inaccessible by the Western world. Unfortunately, Vygotsky died at the age of 38. Vygotsky also suggested that human development results from a dynamic interaction between individuals and society. Through this interaction, children learn gradually and continuously from parents and teachers. This learning, however, can vary from one culture to the next. It is important to note that Vygotsky's theory emphasizes the dynamic nature of this interaction. Application of the Vygotsky's social development theory. Some schools have traditionally held an instruction model in which the teacher stands and lectures for the whole class, while students take notes from her lecture. In contrast, Vygotsky's theory promotes learning contexts in which students play an active role in learning. Children, especially toddlers and preschoolers, often speak aloud to themselves as they are trying to understand something. This self-talk helps them to work things out in their own mind. The more knowledgeable other is somewhat self-explanatory. It refers to anyone who has a better understanding or higher ability level than the learner with respect to a particular task, process, or concept. The more knowledgeable other, or as some call them MKO, is normally thought of as being a teacher, trainer, or older adult. But the more knowledgeable other could also include peers, a younger person, or even computers. Zone of proximal development. According to Vygotsky, the zone of proximal development is the distance between the actual developmental level as determined by independent problem solving and the level of potential development as determined through problem solving under adult guidance or in collaboration with more capable peers. The zone of proximal development contains two features. Scaffolding requires that an instructor shows by examples how to solve a problem while controlling the learning environment so that students can take things step by step, expanding their base of knowledge without excessive frustration. Reciprocal teachings, a highly successful teaching method. Reciprocal teaching provides an environment of open dialogue between student and teacher, which goes beyond a simple question and answer session. In this slide, you see zone of proximal development and how it works with scaffolding. We use technology and tools and knowledgeable others to help us learn what we can and cannot do and what we learn beyond our reach. 4 basic principles underlining the Vygotskian framework. Children construct their knowledge. Developmental cannot be separated from its social context. Learning can lead development. Language plays a central role in mental health. Vygotsky establishes that there are two types of mental functions, the lower and the upper. Lower mental functions are those with which we are born, are the natural functions, and are generally determined. Behavior derived from lower mental functions is limited. It is conditioned by what we can do. These functions we limited our behavior to a reaction or response to the environment. The higher mental functions are acquired and developed through social interaction. Given that the individual is in a specific society with a culture specific. The higher mental functions are determined by the way of being of that society. The higher mental functions are culturally mediated. For Vygotsky, greater social interaction, more knowledgeable, more possibilities for action, more robust mental functions. Vygotsky believes that human development is a process of cultural development, being the activity of the man engine in the process of human development. The concept of activity in his way acquires an especially important role in his theory. For him, the process of formation of the higher psychological functions will be through practical and instrumental, but not individual activity, but in the interaction or social cooperation. Now we know more about Vygotsky's lives and theories. We learn that the language is also crucial and interrelated with action, providing an additional tool used both to reflect on and direct behavior. We can say that all these investigations are of utmost importance for education, since these works provide tools for the development of individual learning and can be used by an educator or the apprentice as the same may apply the best methodology of study according to your needs. Lesson summary. I am going to sum up Vygotsky's theories in a simple exercise that I have put together. First, watch this simple clip. You observe we have the father and we have the daughter. We have the shapes puzzle. Okay, we now take a little trip down memory lane. Think when you were given your first puzzle and you were trying to solve it all alone. If you are like me, you had a really hard time trying to find which square fit the square shape. But in my case, I had my dad sitting right next to me, describing and demonstrating some basic techniques and tips and strategies to solve it. So first he showed me the puzzles and the sizes. He showed me the different shapes and asked me to try to put them together the best I could. So eventually, I became more confident, and my father didn't have to sit next to me anymore. I was able to learn. I was actually able to work more independently. So higher mental functions are characterized more by independent learning and thinking, but this can be cultivated by the elementary mental function, which involves a tutor or someone older who acts as a guide through which we model our behavior. So according to Vygotsky, this type of social interaction involves cooperative and collaborative dialogue, and that's what promotes this cognitive ability or development. In this example, my dad was a MKO, or more knowledgeable other, a person who was higher ability level than the learner being myself. They have a higher level of understanding. My dad is the MKO because he has a better understanding of how to put the puzzle together. He had a better understanding than I do. So in my puzzle example, I was in the zone of proximal development because I was most sensitive to the information my father was giving me. I was between the ability of being able to do something and not being able to do something. And then that zone of guidance that I received is what allowed me to transition from the set of skills I already had to a more expanded set of skills by learning and going beyond what I had already known. This is what develops higher mental functions. The area between what we can't do and what we can do is the zone of proximal development, or ZPD. And that is the area that is most sensitive to instructional guidance, that allows the learner or child to develop the skills that already have and use it on their own and go beyond into the areas they can't do to expand that learning. So for example, I couldn't solve the shapes puzzle by myself when I was little. It would have taken me so much time and a long time to do one at all, but I was able to solve it. With my dad's guidance, the ZPD involves interaction with the MKO. Eventually, I developed that competence of what that skill that I can use in the future. The importance of language according to Vygotsky, the main means by which adults transmit information to children, and it's also a very powerful tool of intellectual adoption. Private speech is also called internal speech. It's when people talk out loud to themselves, which happens most likely with which type of population do you think? Well, if you said with children, you're correct. Children speak out loud. Most children engage in private speech. Vygotsky saw this as a way for children to plan activities and strategies, and this aids in their development. This active speaking to themselves, talking out loud. So he said this language is an acceleration for thinking and understanding. So children who engage in large amounts of private speech are actually much more socially competent than children who do not use this as much. He believed that language develops from social interactions for communication purposes. And later, language ability becomes internalized as thought. So as we grow older, it becomes more internalized, which is called our inner speech. So basically, thought is a result of language. That ability to think for ourselves and develop that independence of executing skills from this importance of language, according to Vygotsky. These are the three main parts of Vygotsky's theories. Now I have 3 examples and 3 questions for you to think about and to relate and to answer about Vygotsky's theory. A mother sitting with her toddler saying, "Ba, ba, black sheep, have you any wool?" "Yes, sir, yes, sir." At this point, the mother pauses and the child sings loudly, 3 bags full. I would like you to think about this. How is this guided participation? A 6-year-old lost a toy and asked her father for help. The father asked her where she last saw the toy. The child says, "I can't remember." He asks a series of questions. Did you have it in your room? Outside? To each question, the child answers no. When he asks, "In the car?" "I think so," and finds the toy in the car. In this example, who found the toy? Think back to your days of driver's ed and driving around with your parents and your temporary driver's license. In what ways did your parent or driving instructor provide guided participation for you? Use these three examples and try to answer these questions.